Hi, welcome to BTECH Software Training Series. In this video we'll go over the basics of BVM, or Battery Validation Manager, software suite. The suite is comprised of three components: BVM, BVS Status Monitor, and BVS Observer. BVM can refer to the entire software suite, including its utilities. BVM is the core software of the suite. It allows the user to view historical battery data, see real-time measurements, and configure settings. First of all, a little terminology. A location is a battery system comprised of all the parallel strings connected to one charger or UPS. When a discharge occurs, the battery system feeds a single load and all the strings currents are equal. BVM loads one battery location at a time. In BVM, the location's information and settings such as alarm limits and communications can be configured. All graphs, reports, and analyses are viewable in BVM. The first thing you see when you open a location in BVM is the battery map or status screen. This shows the status based on the latest analysis, including any measurements outside their limits. From here, the graphs, reports, events, and analyses can be viewed by drilling down or double-clicking the desired rectangle. Using BVM, you can communicate directly with the battery monitor and view real-time measurements, download scheduled measurements, discharges, and events, and view and change controller settings such as limits and scheduled measurement intervals. BVS Status Monitor, or simply Status Monitor, acts like a dashboard for battery monitoring. It displays multiple locations with a summary analysis of each location. You can customize Status Monitor by grouping together locations and loading custom backgrounds for each group. For instance, the background can be a logical or geographical representation of the battery systems. Status Monitor alerts you visually and audibly when new alarms are received. To quickly view a location, you can double-click it, which will launch BVM. BVS Observer, or simply Observer, is actually two programs. One is the user interface, and the other is a Windows service, always running in the background. The Observer service turns on when the computer starts and turns off when the computer is shut down. This allows for continuous monitoring of the battery systems 24/7 as long as the computer is always running. Observer accesses location files across the network and communicates with multiple locations simultaneously. It polls the battery monitoring systems at a fixed interval or when new measurements are available. Observer is continuously listening for new alarms and can email the user those alarms as well as analysis of new data. Every time Observer polls the systems, it also retrieves the latest real-time data from them. Only one instance of Observer should be installed per monitoring site. Multiple instances of Observer polling the same battery monitoring systems would conflict with each other. BVM stores each location's data in a database, either as Microsoft Access or Microsoft SQL Server or SQL. For local battery monitoring access or troubleshooting with a laptop, the Access database would be used. Access is convenient for portability, but isn't as robust as SQL. For a server running Observer and collecting data from 10 or more locations, SQL is required. Using SQL as the backend database makes it more reliable, especially once the battery data history grows. Here is how the data flows using BVM. The user opens up the BVM location, then BVM communicates with the database, either Access or SQL, and retrieves and visualizes the historical data. The user can also use BVM to communicate with the battery monitor, retrieve data, view real-time measurements, etc. Note that BVM can retrieve and send data to the database, meaning it can update settings, store measurements and alarms, etc. The data flow using Status Monitor is a bit simpler. Status Monitor only retrieves data from the database, displaying it to the user. Status Monitor does not write anything to the database, it is read-only. Here is Observer's data flow. The user interacts with the Observer graphical user interface, which then interacts with the database. Observer also talks to the Observer service, which in turn communicates with multiple battery monitors simultaneously, retrieving data from them and storing it back into the database. The Observer service does not require the user to be present and have the graphical user interface application on. It will continue to poll automatically and store the data without intervention. Besides these three main programs, a few utilities are included in the BVM software suite. The first is the merge utility, which allows you to take data from multiple BVM data files and synchronize them. This way, if you have BVM loaded on a laptop to communicate with a battery monitoring system, you can retrieve and merge the data back into the main database. Another utility is the extract utility, which lets the user extract BVM data files from SQL to Access. Let's say a technician needs to get dispatched from the monitoring headquarters to the battery room and troubleshoot an issue. They would extract from SQL the BVM data they need for that particular battery monitoring system. Then, copy the Access files to their laptop. After troubleshooting and gathering new alarms and data, the technician would then go back to headquarters and merge the data back from their laptop into the central database. Besides these utilities, there is one utility that allows the user to delete locations from SQL, another utility that creates all BVM files that are loaded into SQL in case they all get deleted, and a utility that repairs an Access database file if it becomes corrupted. If you want to find more information about the software, there are detailed descriptions and instructions in the help file of each software. Just open the application, click Help, then Help Topics. We'll be happy to answer any questions. You can just email us at techsupport@btechinc.com. Thanks for watching.